Jean Tewksbury, a respected Eastern panther and wildlife researcher. Her primary focus is pursuing Maine's mystery cat. She also investigates and researches sightings, reports, and newspaper articles on this topic from other Eastern states. If you've had a sighting or have any information on this subject matter, Jean would like to hear from you. We can find her on Facebook and Instagram. Also, you can send her a direct message via Instagram or Facebook Messenger. Jean Tewksbury is on the trail of the mysterious Eastern Panther. Report your sightings today.
This is Brian the Writer, and you are listening to Let's Find Out with Diego.
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's another episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me. On this episode of Let's Find Out, one of the biggest pop culture phenomenon, an elusive being Bigfoot, has captured the minds and imaginations of cryptozoologists, researchers, and investigators from around the world. The book, Knocks and Howls, gives us 12 tales of humor, horror, mystery, and mayhem, as written by several different authors. Published by Becky Books, these stories are set to entertain and amaze you. Please welcome to Let's Find Out our good friends, authors Jim Beard and Josh Pritchett. Jim, Josh, Jim, my friends, welcome to Let's Find Out. I'm so happy to have you on tonight.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you, Diego. Jim?
I'm terrific, man. I'm happy to have both of you here, and returning Josh, of course. But before we start with some of these things, Jim, I'd like to start with you because I just recently became familiar with some of your history and your works, and it's very impressive, my friend. So we'll start with, Knocks and Howls is out now and ready for the listeners to read. But it's like, before we start with this, you have quite a history as a writer, editor, and publisher. Can we take a look at what you've done prior to the new book? I know it's a long journey, but we have time, so we can go over some of this stuff.
I was gonna say, how much time do you actually have? Yeah, I've been writing professionally for this is going into my 23rd year. I started off, I sold a story to DC Comics way back when for a comic book called JSA Secret Files. And I haven't looked back since. I consider myself to be very, very fortunate and lucky with all the things that I've gotten to do. But in more recent years, I've started publishing myself, and I'm really happy to do work for other people. But there's a satisfaction that I can't begin to describe by publishing things myself. Just today, not long before we started recording this, I opened up my mailbox and I got copies of my latest book. And it's been several years now since I've been self-publishing. There is nothing like the feeling of holding one of your books in your hands, that physical copy, and you say, I did this.
Yeah, I know, because, Josh, same thing with Josh, but, you glance those over real quick, but I want to bring it back. Not everybody gets to write for DC or for involved in the JLA. So how did that come about? Because was it something that was it through network and somebody say, hey, they're looking for somebody to write a story for them? Or
yeah,
was it just
kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of. I'm friends with a writer from DC, and we always talked a lot. about the process of writing, and I got to know the editors because I was a letter hack back in those days. I liked to write letters, to the comics that I enjoyed. So the editors kind of knew me. And when my friend and I were talking, and he was telling me about some story, and I said, "Oh, you should kind of do this or that." And he's like, "Dude, he goes, why don't you just write that yourself?" So again, it was knowing the editor. The editor knew me. I sent him a little pitch for a short story. Those Secret Files books, for anybody who might not be familiar with them, they always had like several short stories plus some text pages. It was like a drawing of a character, and then they'd write out who they were and what they did and all of that. And it was funny. It was on my birthday that one year that I got the call from the editor, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, we're gonna accept your story." It was only 4 pages long, but it was just the thrill of a lifetime, and it really got me started. It put the idea in my head that I could write something and be paid for it, and then it would be published and people would read it.
Now, with that, did you write any other short story for any other comic books or Marvel or anything else like that?
Right after that, I was able to do a Star Wars short story for Dark Horse Comics. They had the license back then, and they had a book out called Star Wars Tales, which was an anthology book, and I did a story for them. And at that point, I was so full of myself that I thought, this is it. I got 2 comic book short stories, and I'm taking off from here on out. But unfortunately, then really nothing happened after that in comic books. It was a really weird time in the industry where there were still chances that people like me could get that opportunity to kind of get in the door, but then the door kind of slammed shut after that. They really, the companies really pulled back after that, and they stopped doing that. They just, they didn't want to, have that fan-made good kind of a thing going on. So I looked around and said, what else can I do? And that's when I really got into prose writing and started looking into the kinds of stories that I wanted to write and what publishers were out there for the kind of stories that I wanted to write. And really, it was when I became a pulp writer. I started working with that classic pulp style from the pulp magazines from the 30s through the 50s, and realized how much I loved it and how much that I, realized that I could write in that style. And so I worked several years with other pulp publishers until I hit the moment where I knew that I wanted to do everything, myself. And I co-founded a little publishing house called Flinch Books, with a guy from Cleveland, Ohio, John Bruning, and we're still doing that to this day. We put out like 1 to 2 books a year, a lot of anthologies, all fiction stuff. And then just a few years ago, I started doing books completely on my own, and that became Becky Books, and that's both fiction and nonfiction. In fact, Knox and Howls is the first fiction anthology that I've put out as Becky Books.
Wow, and I've seen that the reputation of the book is growing, and we're going to get into that here real soon. Now, Josh, you're no stranger to the show,
Yes.
and you've been on with me on the prior version of this show and also the new one now.
Yeah.
Plenty of short stories
I
you've
have.
written, and you've written books too. Can you give us a quick history of what you've done so far? Because last time you were here with me a few months ago, you just released a new book.
Yes. Well, I got my first short story published, I want to say about 2010. It was a little short story I wrote called Wrappings to a horror anthology. That was my first publication. That was a story about a mummy that had disappeared. And I was rather proud of that. It was just really fun to write it, and I was able to get it published. And then not long after, I met Mary Fan, who's a mutual friend of Jim's and I. And she was telling me about this anthology she was putting together called Brave New Girls. And I had kind of an idea that I developed. It was a character called the Robot Repair Girl, a.k.a. Madison Brown, who essentially she repairs and rescues robots from humans. And a couple years ago, I decided to put a bunch of the short stories I had already written. Some of them were about Bigfoot, but other horror and science fiction related stuff that I put together in a little book called Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural. And then last year, the original rights to the original Madison Brown stories had reverted back to me. So Mary urged me to put them together in my own anthology and maybe add a couple stories. And I went ahead and did that. I wrote one story that actually features Madison encountering Bigfoot. And that was a lot of fun to write. And then Mary told me about what Jim was doing, and she knew how much I was into Bigfoot. So she gave me Jim's contact information. And essentially, the genesis of the story in Keto was I was originally thinking of a Bigfoot novel idea. But I had a problem. I was reading chapters to my writing group, and I had this one guy who just liked to get in everybody's business, and he really started discouraging me, and I just put it aside. And then I got to talking with Jim, and I decided to resurrect the idea. Basically, it was the basic idea, Jim, of a veterinarian finding a Bigfoot in her front yard, and that was where it kind of came from. And then as I started writing, I started developing the idea more and more, and came with the idea, well, what if this special blood formula or whatever could make Enkidu, the main character, talk? And I got more into the idea. What does he think? And I really had fun with the story. It was really great, and I'm glad Jim enjoyed it. And I think, Jim, when you accepted it, you kind of compared it to the Planet of the Apes movies, which
well, you know what I think I did is I think I actually said it was almost like the reverse of Planet of the Apes, where the apes are very comfortable in their world, and then suddenly everything's turned upside down because they discover a human who can talk.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's like a twist on that, and we're all comfortable in our world, and then suddenly there's this Bigfoot ape type creature, and then all of a sudden it talks. One of the things that I really appreciated with Josh's story, that it's in the first person, and our narrator really comes alive, and you go down this path and this journey with her of becoming closer and closer to the Bigfoot character. And then sort of like, how does that shake out? How do they impact each other's lives? So it was just the kind of thing that I was hoping for when I started to gather stories for this. And with Josh's pedigree there and that background of stuff, I mean, is it any wonder, that I wanted him in the book? I'm really amazed at how the connections between all the different writers in the community. You were talking about, Mary, and I knew several other writers who knew Mary, and then I became friends with her on Facebook, and I always wanted to work with her. And then suddenly, it was so funny. I never expected it when I put out a call for Bigfoot stories. And there's Mary going, I think I have a Bigfoot story that I want to write. It's just amazing how these things, come together. And then that's so cool, that Josh, you got that connection with her too. She's amazing. She really is.
Oh yeah, she's fantastic. Yeah, and she and I went to Ireland with her family a few years ago to visit Skellig Michael and some of the places they filmed Star Wars at, the most recent Star Wars trilogy.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a great time. Ireland's amazing to go to. I highly recommend it. Oh yeah, and we had a great time out there.
And Mary's story is yet even so different from Josh's, that she wrote basically a rom-com about podcasters. Watch out, Diego.
I love it so far. Tell me about it.
Her story basically is a lady who has her own like cryptid podcast, YouTube show, whatever, and she starts to get like criticisms for not going out into the field, that she was basically taking different information and just sort of reworking it and making that part of her show. She was reporting on things, but she starts getting criticism by not actually going out and gathering. So when she does that, she actually runs afoul of a guy who's basically doing the same thing that she does, except he's known for being out in the field. So they're both out there and they're butting heads over how to, track down Bigfoot. And then, as they say, hilarity ensues.
Oh, I love it already. It's funny you mentioned that, because there's been, of course, not during the interviews, but offline, post interviews, and people say, how come you don't go out there in the woods, in the field, and do your investigation? Because there's a difference between research and investigations.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I'm not really a woodsy kind of guy, but, I guess I should be. I live in West Virginia in the mountains, so I should really start getting accustomed to these things. And But let me ask you this, because we're talking about Bigfoot, and that the popularity of this being seems to be growing by the year. With all the cryptids out there, and I'll ask this to both of you, but I'll start with you, Jim. Why or how did you decide to narrow it down to Bigfoot stories? It's a twofold question. Have you ever had an experience or a sighting of a Bigfoot, or does the possibility of his existence gives you that, wow, I really want to write about this subject because it's possible that it exists, but there's always a skeptic mind.
Yeah. It's a great question. I really have to, be honest and say at this moment in time, I'm pretty much an agnostic as far as Bigfoot goes. It really kind of depends on what day of the week it is, and what I believe and how much I believe. Like many of us of a certain age, I've been fascinated by by Bigfoot since I was a little kid. There was a time when what it is today is a lot different than what it was like in the 60s and 70s, although kind of in the 70s is when things kicked off. As I say in the introduction, that the book is not about Bigfoot, it's about the idea of Bigfoot, really. It's fascinating that the idea of Sasquatch or Bigfoot has become like a cottage industry. It's not just research, and it's not just theory, and it's not just thinking about the idea of this actual creature that may or may not exist in our world and in our forests and around. It's become that Bigfoot is now Bigfoot is a TV show. Bigfoot is a movie. Bigfoot is toys that you buy for your children. Bigfoot is books. Bigfoot is in songs. It's a really fascinating thing that it's become. And I started to realize this because more recently I've been doing different kinds of shows to set up and sell my books. And something I just recently stumbled upon is the idea of doing cryptid shows. I've done a few of them, and I'm really enjoying it because the audience there is very different from other types of shows that I've done. And when you're in a dealer's room at a cryptid show, it's different from being in like the speaking hall where you have a cryptozoologist talking about being out there and tracking and all that stuff. And then you walk into a room where, again, you have people making plush toys of Mothman and Bigfoot and you know, extraterrestrials and things like that. And it utterly fascinates me what it's become. And in some ways, I know that like real, honest, hard researchers probably hate that stuff because it, you know, it doesn't help them when they're trying to convince people of the reality of Bigfoot. So again, kind of going back, I've always been fascinated by Bigfoot. I used to love it when there was a TV special on about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and things like that. I did, you know, like reports on it in school for projects, book reports and things like that. And so I think things changed. You know, the Patterson-Gimlin film was everything when I was a kid. You know, I was born in 65. Patterson-Gimlin film is, correct me if I'm wrong, is it 68 maybe? I think that it's right around in there.
Yeah.
And so there was this period of time where Bigfoot was this really fringe idea. And then you start to go into the 70s and it starts to become a pop culture thing. And a lot of that, at least me personally, was spurred on by Bigfoot appeared on the $6 Million Man.
You just read my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And now everything has changed. Like suddenly Bigfoot is not this, you know, fuzzy, you know, kind of hard to see figure on this film that bounces up and down and whatever. And now all of a sudden it's an actor in a costume in your favorite TV show, and your favorite hero on TV is fighting Bigfoot, you know? And at that moment, to me, a whole new world opened up as far as Bigfoot is now not only a quote unquote real thing, but it's also a fictional character. And I've carried that idea with me through all these years. And to the point where I knew I wanted to do a collection of Bigfoot stories, fiction stories, and finally the time was right, and I knew I wanted it to be many different type of Bigfoot stories, and I think that's what we've achieved with that. I mean, Josh's is about as different from Mary's as Mary's is from Josh's, from my own story, and all these other different people, you know, that are in it. So that's a very long-winded way of saying
that's perfect and honest. You know, I appreciate that.
Yeah, Bigfoot has been with me all my life, but not always in the same way. And I've gone back and forth, just like I was joking about what day of the week is it? It's okay, well it's it's Friday. So today Bigfoot is a pop culture idea. Tomorrow on Saturday I may go back to wow, is it real? And thinking about like, how could it be real? So that's where I'm at.
I mean, I guess it's just part of the fun. And Josh, I asked you the same question, but that's the same but different because we met almost 3 years ago.
Yes.
And I believe it was a Wares Cave or Stewart's Draft area, and you had a table. You had a book that just came out. It was a collection also of horror stories. You were around a lot of the people who might have been believers or skeptics, researchers, and people who went out there and gave presentations. In your opinion, what do you think now of? Has it changed your mind whether you believe or not believe in Bigfoot? Is it still up in the air?
Well, Diego, this is the thing. I believe it. I've always said this. I believe in the possibility of Bigfoot. I believe that there's a lot of evidence that supports it. I believe a lot of the people who've tried to disprove it, I'm far more skeptical of them. Especially, I think I've told you, it's John Hieronymus, the guy who claims that he wore the Bigfoot costume.
Mm-hmm.
I never think, every time I see him interviewed, I don't think he ever keeps his story straight. But at the same time, yeah, there are a lot of people that go out there and just put on a cheap gorilla costume and take pictures of it. And there's certain groups that I just feel like, okay, yeah, they're just lying to people. They're making fun of them. I don't accept Bigfoot on a religious thing. I believe it exists. Now, whether it is a heretofore undiscovered primate or it's a hominid, a different type of human that has evolved alongside us, there have been precedents in nature for that. Okay, that's a possibility too. I just, I'm not, I believe it. As I've always said, I believe in the possibility. I'm open minded to it. I'll listen to other people's stories. If you tell me that, oh, you saw Bigfoot going through your trash, okay, I have no reason to disbelieve you. But on the other hand, someone's going to tell me some story about how, oh, they got abducted as a kid by Bigfoot, or they saw Bigfoot jump into a flying saucer with JFK and Marilyn Monroe. I'm going to be dubious about that guy. Okay, that I'm going to be a little thing about that for a minute. But if somebody said they saw Bigfoot walking along the side of the highway 66, okay, that's possible in my opinion. Yeah.
And I think it's more than fair what you said there. I think we all go through the up and downs, even if for somebody who's religious, they go through those valleys. They super believe, they're not sure, they don't believe. I think with anything, it's possible. But which brings us now to the book, of course. 12 stories. I don't know how you managed to get 12 people to work on a project, get it done in a decent time. But, you had a good person helping you, of course. So Knox and Howls, 12 tales of humor, horror, and mystery. We already love the whole premise of it.
Good.
Who are the 12 who are involved in this project? Minus Josh. We know Josh is.
So, and I'm one of them. So that's 2 right there. That leaves 10. Well, we know that Mary Fan is in there. So we have Josh Reynolds, Matthew Kreisel, Christopher Ryan, Forrest Helvey, George Eby, Bobby Nash, John Bruning, who is my Flinch Books partner, John Small, Eric Esquivel, and then of course Josh and me. I think people who maybe read a lot of pulp fiction, the stuff that's being written these days or whatever, are going to recognize some of those names, especially Josh Reynolds, especially Bobby Nash. Bobby's big in the pulp writing. We're kind of from all different backgrounds, and I think it kind of reflects what Josh is saying about all the different people out there that are involved in the Bigfoot community. I'd like to think that we put together a book that is for everybody. You don't have to be a believer. You don't have to be a skeptic to read this book. One of the things that I told all the writers that I wanted was when you're writing your stories, you're going to have all different kinds of characters in it. But what I don't want is I don't want you to get nasty about the people who really truly do believe in Bigfoot. I don't want, because my intention is to have the book available for sale at cryptid shows. I don't want, there's a lot of different people who go to those shows, but there's a lot of believers, obviously. I don't want them to walk into this book and realize that we're making fun of them, because that's not true. I didn't pull all of the writers, and say, before you start writing the story for my book, I need to know, are you a believer? Are you a skeptic, or are you an agnostic like me? I didn't want to do that at all. But the stories are really for everybody. It's a little bit of everything and something for everyone in this book.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, whether you believe or not, you're in the middle. It's okay to have fun. It's just relax, read the book, and just enjoy yourself.
That's a fantastic point. It really, really is. And it really goes into what I've been saying all along, which is there are people who are deadly serious about Bigfoot, and that's fantastic. But it's become an idea of you can also have fun with it, and by that I mean, again, we're not making fun of the idea that there could be a Bigfoot, but rather showing all the different ways that Bigfoot has made its way into pop culture, fiction. I guess in like Star Wars or Star Trek terms, it would be like the expanded universe of Bigfoot. There's the canon, which is the actual creature Bigfoot, and then there's the way that he's gotten into our imagination, far far beyond the forests that he allegedly walks through.
Yeah, and something comes to mind because you mentioned Star Wars fans, and earlier in the show, you're talking about Bigfoot the doll, Bigfoot the lunch pail, Bigfoot this, Bigfoot the shirt.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Spaceballs effect to Star Wars. You have Spaceballs the movies. So, and I never met one Star Wars fan that hated Spaceballs. They all love it secretly or openly. They love it.
Yeah, I'm one of the people that love Spaceballs. I've watched that movie I don't know how many times.
Right. So,
I'm an agnostic. No, I like Spaceballs. I saw it in the theater when it was originally out, and I just saw it for the first time in ages, not too long ago, and remembered different parts of it that are very funny. So, but yeah, I totally get you on that one. And I hope everybody realizes that thing that I'm talking about. I did a cryptid show where next to me was a woman who actually makes plushes of all the different cryptids. And I enjoyed talking with her. I actually bought a Fiji mermaid from her. You know what the Fiji mermaid is?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
the thing that was cobbled together. I think P.T. Barnum might have been involved in that, and it was a hoax, But I had to at one point sit back, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird, the Mothman, which we're told is something that actually exudes fear in people. People are nearly frightened to death by this thing if they're near it or whatever. But it's on a table as a plush right next to me, and it's like, how strange is that? And it's so human of us that human will take something like that and make a kid's plush toy out of it, which I think is really, really wonderful that we can do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're speaking about Mothman, so the listeners will not be able to see this, but if you look towards this side here, you see a little Mothman on the wall back here. Bring one here. Speaking of that, picking up on the crypto shows, I got a Mothman here as well. It's just fun stuff to have, But Josh, going to you, my friend, what's the name of the story that you have in this book, and can you give us a little something about it, but don't spoil it for us.
Okay, so the name of the story is Enkidu, and if you guys don't mind, I'm going to read a little part about that explains why it's called Enkidu. Enkidu is actually a reference to Babylonian mythology. He is the wild man friend of you know who I was talking about, not Agamemnon, that's Greek.
I think I know it, but I'm not well enough to jump in and help you out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Gilgamesh.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, sorry. And if you guys mind, I'm going to read the part where the lead character who's narrating the story, why she picked that name. And it will make sense in a moment. Okay, if you guys are ready.
You're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is about halfway through the story here, or not too far from the beginning, but it's towards the middle point. And then the name of the character is Lisa. She's the veterinarian, and she's working with Enkidu. So, okay. Over the next few weeks, Enkidu's speech and comprehension skills grew. I had taught him that humans called his species Bigfoot, because they were a different group from gorillas or humans. I also explained that I had named him Enkidu because humans give each person their own name to identify them separately. In case you don't know, the name it comes from my favorite episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. In 2 weeks, we were able to have full conversations, and it was then that Enkidu asked me the question, Lisa, why am I at the zoo? I recounted how Mike and I had found him in our yard. You lost a lot of blood when we found you, I said. Do you understand what blood is? Yes, he said. If someone loses too much blood, they'll die. You lost a lot of your own blood and would have died without new blood. I explained to him about transfusions and about the artificial blood that was used because we didn't have Bigfoot blood. He seemed to understand most of it. Why can't I talk like you, Lisa? Enkidu asked. No other Bigfoot has ever talked like you? I asked. I wasn't really surprised by this. I was still working on the assumption that his brain had all the right connections for speech, but he had needed exposure to humans to make use of them. No, he said. Can you tell me who hurt you? I asked. It was other Bigfoot, he said. Other Bigfoot hurt you before you ended up in my yard? I asked. I had thought that his injuries were consistent with a blunt force attack like he'd been in a fight. The idea that there had been more than one Bigfoot that close to my house was more than a little disturbing. Enkidu nodded. I was looking for food when they attacked me. I fought back, but they hurt me, made blood come out of me. I don't remember very much after that until I was here. Why did they attack you? I don't have... Enkidu paused for a moment and seemed to think about the right words. Family. You didn't have a family? Were you abandoned? Yes. No. He said and looked like he was thinking about it. Human. Not the right word. That's fine. Just take your time. Pushed, he said, and made a gesture like he was shoving something away. Made to leave. You were forced out? Yes, forced out. Who forced you out? New males. New males? You mean new males invaded? I don't know that word. Invaded. Invade. It means to attack others, take their lands, and sometimes take people. Yes, new males invaded. The new males invade family. They kill lead male. I think I know this word. You mean father? I asked. They killed your father. New males invade. Kill father. Kill other males. Take females. And females kill smaller males. I thought about what Enkidu was saying. The mothers killed the children? Enkidu nodded vigorously. Father has many mates, many children. My mother not kill me. He slapped his chest with his bare hand, making a hollow thud. She make me hide away, then went back to family, and I was alone. She didn't want you to die? Enkidu paused, his tears rolled down his big cheeks, and I went over to lay my hands on his massive hairy arm. It's okay, I said. What happened after that? Tried to find food. It was hard, but I found food. Tried to find new family, and I did. You found other Bigfoot families? What happened? Other Bigfoot threw rocks, hit me because I am male, not want many males in family. One night I was looking for food alone, and they attacked me in the woods, maybe afraid I would steal female or food. I ran away, but they hurt me and made blood come out. I nodded when I was trying to work up an understanding of Enkidu. I researched gorillas for a baseline. I found that gorilla packs or families often send extra males away so they don't compete with each other over the food and females. If Bigfoot was similar to gorillas, a pack might see a new meal as a threat. After he told me what happened to him, I thought that Enkidu would be safe and taken care of in the zoo for the rest of his life. I even assured him of that. I feel so stupid looking back now. That's as far as I want to go on that for now. Everyone will have to go by the book if you want to see the rest of it.
Boy, that makes me want to do an audio book version of the book. Yeah, if we can get like the voices, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first time I've had somebody do a reading that actually used the character voices. Really appreciate that, man. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to remember that next time I do a reading, because I don't usually do voices. That's great.
Yeah, well, that was just his voice. That's what it sounded like in my head when I was writing his scenes.
That's great. That's great. That's how stuff comes alive, for writers. Josh, I think one of the wonderful things about your story, and you really illustrated that there, is that you go into thinking about how Bigfoot culture might be.
Yeah.
So in many ways, a part of what you're doing is the actual researchers and trackers and everything that we do have, because they're theorizing about, how is Bigfoot, how is a family group set up, but you're taking it and you're working it into a fiction story that's entertaining, and that's how you fulfilled the mission of this book.
When I first started wanting to write Bigfoot stories, Jim, I used gorillas as sort of a basis.
Yeah.
And I always thought that behaviors would be similar. I never wanted to write Bigfoot as a stand-in for, say, Jason Voorhees or characters like that. I wanted it to be something else. And so gorillas, I've always been fascinated with gorillas, like King Kong and all that. And so I was doing a lot of homework. I read Gorillas in the Mist, followed a lot of the things that Jane Goodall has written and others. And so it was just natural to, use that information as a basis for this story.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And, also because I live only 100 miles from the DC Zoo, and I visit it regularly, especially the Gorilla House. So it was easy from my own memories. It's a place I know.
Yeah.
That part of the DC area is a place I know very well. Having gone there so many times, it made sense to write about that area and use that as opposed to another zoo or somewhere else. So, the idea that, okay, it made sense to have Lisa and her husband live near a national park. And that way you have the government come in and say, okay, well, clearly because this creature must have come out of this national park, we're taking custody of it. So we're bringing it back to the DC Zoo. And then, they decide, well, okay, Lisa, you know more about him. So we're kind of drafting you and we want you to come back with us so as to be able to continue to treat him, and that was, that was kind of, that was how it all came together. So,
it is always helpful to write about places that you've been to and have experience being there. So it kind of helps the stories come alive instead of just saying, well, somewhere in a part of the country I've never been into, let me just guess how it would go. So that's a great thing. And Jim, now Knox and Howls has been out now, what, about 2 months now, or about a month?
Yeah, I think it's actually more like 2 months now. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I understand. A lot of things when you're so busy, tends to tend to lose track of what's going on. So, Knox and Howls, for the listeners of Let's Find Out that want to get their hands on a copy of the book, where can they go find out more information about it?
So you can go directly to Amazon. And you can either, put the title in there. The subtitle is a Bigfoot fiction anthology. Or you can put my name in to do, a search under books, and you'll see all of my books will come up, and that will be part of it. You can put Josh's name in, and I'm sure, it'll come up that way too, or Mary Fan. So there's many different ways to look for it. And then if you want to see the first page of all 12 stories, and you're on Facebook, go to the Jim Beard and Becky Books page. And when the book first came out, I did the 12 days of Bigfoot. And every single day I did a screenshot of the very first page of each one of the stories. So that's another way to get a little, taste of not only like what the story is about, but like the way the writer's style and all of that. It was really fun to do that. And you'll see that on that page. And that's the Jim Beard and Becky Books page on Facebook.
Excellent. I'm already following you. Josh, same thing with you. I know that you have a number of things out there for the listeners that they heard you last time. Where can they find out more about what you've done, your short stories and your books?
Just go to Amazon, put Josh Pritchett in your search engine, and what I've written will come up. You can also go to bravenewgirls.com and look up the previous stories I've written there. In fact, this summer we've got another volume coming out, and this is also going to have a Bigfoot story in it that I've written, this time with my other character, Itzel, who is a teenager who is currently going to a version of Starfleet Academy. We don't call it that. We call it the Space Guard Proving Grounds. And she's a cadet. And she and her friends are sent on a training mission to Mount St. Helens region to learn how to do planetary surveys, and they encounter Bigfoot there.
I'm already intrigued. I love Bigfoot, man.
See, isn't this amazing? Again, how many ways you can use the idea of Bigfoot? It's astounding. It's like this universal idea, and I love it. And I hope that the day that when we finally discover Bigfoot for real, that it doesn't ruin all of the the great stuff that we've done with it outside of the so-called reality of it.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see Bigfoot, but I don't want to see Bigfoot hunted or anything like that. I'd like to see him studied.
Yeah.
By, somebody like a Jane Goodall or, somebody go out there and study. And, I talk about that. And, again, Bigfoot is always on my mind, and I love the fact that all my friends keep encouraging my interest in it. That they send me stuff that, hey, I just saw this thing about Bigfoot. I had to send this to you. So it's okay, cool, man.
That's wonderful. I'm a big fan of the now defunct Animal Planet show Finding Bigfoot. In fact, that was a pretty big inspiration to me for this book. In fact, I call it Knox and Howls because those people on the show really popularized the idea of those are the two ways that you can use, to try to communicate with Bigfoot, doing the knocks and doing the howls. And I give them credit for that in the book. At one point, when I was so into that show and I would look around and see what other shows were, at one point there was one about trying to track it and kill it. And I can't think of the name of the show. My wife and I watched one episode of it and found it so distasteful, and because it was a complete about face from Finding Bigfoot. It was literally a bunch of guys with guns who that was their purpose, was to track it down and shoot it and kill one. and it was like, no, that's not what this should be all about. So,
Yeah.
When Josh, when you said that, it immediately made me think of that. I don't want it to be killed. I think, we should get down to the bottom of that mystery someday, but not at the expense of, killing what is most likely a fairly intelligent creature.
Yeah. Well, just to put this in a bigger context, I think I heard somewhere that there are less than 10,000 gorillas in the wild that they estimate, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the gorilla population in Africa is being driven to extinction.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I would want is some bunch of yahoos running around in the woods trying to kill a Bigfoot if we did find,
Yeah.
unquestionable proof.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say, a giant Bigfoot walking into a convenience store or something,
Yeah.
somebody get, which I've thought of that a couple of times, just the Bigfoot sort of walking into like a 7-Eleven on a highway somewhere, and okay, you catch it on security camera. You can't dispute this thing exists now.
Yeah.
It's there. And and then you suddenly having people go out and trying to kill one to say, oh, I got one.
Mm-hmm.
I find that I agree with you, Jim. That's very distasteful. Like I said, I would rather have a group of primate experts go into the wilderness, try to find it, and study the phenomenon, study what these creatures are like, and get an idea for their world.
Right. Just like anything, it's, studying dolphins, studying, porpoises or some other, intelligent species, on there. That Sasquatch should be the same way. It should be treated the exact same way, and in some places in the United States, they've all, that you get like a city council or whoever who have already tried to put it into law that if these things are real, it is against the law to shoot and kill one.
Oh yeah, that's the thing in I believe in Washington State has a no kill policy on Bigfoot, and I think Oregon and California might have the same thing.
Yeah. I think that's nice because that's thinking ahead. It's not saying we're not saying it exists. We're not saying absolutely it exists, but if it does, it needs to be protected just like anything else.
Right. It's and one thing that I point out to people that are skeptical, I say, there's millions of square miles in these areas that no one's walked in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's very possible that they exist there, and they've gotten by just fine without having a one-on-one encounter with human beings.
Yep. That's one of those things that you put a check in the the for column. There is so much land that we humans have just do not know, and couldn't possibly cover every square foot of it. And so that, that's the part of my brain that says, yeah, this could really, really exist.
Yeah. And context, I was looking at this. There was another show called Monster Quest, and they had this big story about this guy's cabin in Manitoba, Canada. And that's a huge, vast, wild, wetland.
Sure.
That a creature like a Bigfoot could probably exist there, and no one would ever notice it. My only doubt about that was, okay, if a Bigfoot was coming into this guy's cabin and wrecking it, why was it opening the door? Why did it just knock the door down? That was my one skepticism about
opposable thumbs. The opposable thumbs theory.
Well, opposable thumbs, but why would they bother with turning a doorknob? That was my only problem with that.
Hey, polite Bigfoot. It could have knocked on the door, but
It could be from observation, that they've had plenty of chances to observe humans and human behavior, and that's why they stay away from us because they see
if I had the
exactly how
option,
we
I'd
are.
probably stay away from people too. But I don't have that.
Yeah, I would stay
I'm
away
not
too
surprised
myself.
that they're hard to find.
Yeah.
But gentlemen, it's been a great discussion, and I know that here in the next coming months, you guys will be doing a lot of the conventions, and one thing that'll probably bring us all together is Bigfoot once again, because that's the reason we're there, right?
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
so, with that being said, I would love to have you guys come back on later this year. If you guys release another volume of books and stories, please come back. I'd love to hear more about it and see if maybe down the road, maybe your mind's changed a little bit more about the possibility of Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm gonna be at Monster Fest 2, and I think it's in June if I'm not mistaken. It's put out by a group called Small Town Monsters. And it's in Ohio, and I hate to say this, but I can't remember exactly where it is, but look for it, Monster Fest 2, if you want to get a copy from me directly, and have it signed and all of that. So that'll be coming up this year for me.
I am going to be in June at the Bigfoot conference in Weir's Cave, Virginia. And selling books and talking with people, and possibly selling some of my own artwork too. That'll be Bigfoot inspired. As everybody knows, I love talking to people. So
excellent. I look forward to seeing you two, my friends, down the road.
Yeah, it's good seeing you, Diego. Jim, it's great finally getting to talk to you in person rather than
Same here. This has been really fun because I like talking Bigfoot too.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friends. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Please check us out on all our social media, YouTube, and we're also on Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, Let's Find Out is now on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Catch the show on Saturdays at 2 a.m. For more information, please visit kgradb.com. That's kgradb.com. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Let's find out with Diego, the power of Diego Mania. All content for Let's Find Out is property of CoHostDiego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.